Hi everyone, you've clicked onto the 2023-24 Hudson Valley Winter Outlook with me, Ben Noll, coming to you from New Zealand. It is mid-October, but the first snowfall may only be a few weeks away, so I think it's a good time to break down what the months ahead may bring to the Hudson Valley region in terms of snowfall. A lot of interesting things to discuss over the next half an hour or so. Look, I think this is going to take a little while. So, sit back, relax, hope you have a drink ready. If not, pause it, run to the fridge, grab a drink, grab a snack, put it on the big screen. It is going to be a fun journey here over the next little while. I do hope you learn something and take something away from the presentation today. We're going to start off with an overview of the climate trends in the Hudson Valley. So, a winter of old, quite a bit different from the winters of present. Things have changed dramatically over the decades, and I think that's really useful context. You'll learn a little bit about that in the slides ahead. Before we get to what's driving the winter pattern this year, we've got El Niño. What is El Niño? I'm going to break it down for you today, and we're going to look back at what El Niño winters in the past have meant for our region, in addition to the signs and signals for the months ahead. So will it be a winter that starts slow and ends with a big bang? Potentially, and that's the type of information you're going to learn more about if you fast forward 30 to 45 minutes from now. So let's get into it. We're going to start off looking at a chart. Now, this chart here is showing annual temperatures in the Hudson Valley dating back to 1940. Now, there's no doubt about it. Temperatures over time have been increasing across the region. You can see historically, temperatures on average over the course of a year used to be below 50 degrees on average, but now, the most recent years, we're seeing our annual average temperature creeping up above 50, into the low 50s. Now, it may not seem like much, a trend of several degrees over the last 80 plus years, but imagine a winter storm where instead of it being 30 degrees, it's 32 or 33. And that, several degree difference can mean the difference between a rainstorm and a snowstorm, or a snowstorm or an ice storm. And these are things that can have a meaningful impact on our weather that we experience any time of the year, whether it's summer heat extremes and humidity, or in the winter being just a little bit warmer and therefore more difficult to have the snowfall. So we need to consider that our long-term trend is toward a warmer climate in the Hudson Valley, and that is going to have implications on the winters that we experience in our region. Now, the next graph is looking at temperatures and how they've changed in the different months of the year. So what we've got on the left is January, and you can go right through from left to right all the way to December. And each individual dot here represents the temperature trend over the course of the year. So what we can see here is that the winter months, January here at the far left, and February and December, as I circle, are the 3 months of the year that are trending warmer and more so than any other year or any other month during the year. So in December, which is this dot here, we've seen over 3 degrees warmer in the present climate, say over the last 30 years, compared to the climate in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. So it's a pretty dramatic trend. December is our fastest warming month here in the Hudson Valley, followed by February, and then January. But all 12 months of the year are trending warmer, but the winter season has the strongest trend line. Now, as we look at the winters of the past and try and compare them with the winters of the present, what I've developed here is what I like to call something of a climate candy bar, if you will. Now, each block of the candy bar is either colored blue or red, and this starts in the year 1940 up at the top here, and as you go through time, what we see is more red blocks, and it ends in the year 2022. So it's over 80 years. Now, the blue blocks mean winters that are harsher. They have more snow, they're colder, and they're windier. Notice how there's a lot more blue blocks if we go back in time. So in the 1940s, in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. But as you go through time, we're not quite seeing all that many blue blocks, and especially over the last decade. The winters have not been quite as harsh, and the winters of old are just overall harsher than the ones that we experience now. It doesn't mean that you can't get a blue block in the year 2023 or 24. It's just harder to do, and they come around less frequently. So certainly we could have a winter that is like in the old 1950s and 60s, but it's just not as common. Statistically, the odds are just not that high for having a really harsh winter like we used to have in the region. Now, as we start to shift gears in the slides ahead to what we might expect in this winter, first let's have a look at the first inch of snow. When does it occur on average? And that's what this chart shows. So I've taken the last 10 years of data and looked at when the Hudson Valley, in this case Poughkeepsie, has experienced its first inch of snow, so the first accumulating snowfall. Now the average over the last 10 years is the first week of December 6th to be precise. So if you're competing in a school competition, when's the first snow day going to be? This may be some useful information for you. But you can see that depending on the year, it can be as early as mid-November, as we saw last year, to as late as we saw the previous year in early January. So there's quite a wide range on when we might experience our first inch of snow. But in this chart, there are 2 years that are quite similar from a climate perspective to the present year. In 2015-16, that was the last time we had a strong El Niño. It took all the way until December 29th to have our first inch of snow in the Hudson Valley. And the other year that has some similarities with the present is 2019-20. And that year, the first snowfall occurred on December 1st. So in both cases, we didn't see any accumulating snowfall until December. So that may be something that influences the prediction and the thought process this year, is that maybe October and November come and go, and the chances for snow are a bit lower. Okay, so you've probably heard quite a bit about El Niño by now, whether it's in the news or reading something online, maybe one of my old posts. But what actually is it? So it exists in the ocean, and what we're looking at here is sea surface temperatures as a difference from average. These red colors indicating warmer than average seas, and blue colors indicating cooler than average seas. And for El Niño, the focal point is the equatorial Pacific Ocean, so thousands of miles away from the Hudson Valley. But it actually plays a pretty important role in the prevailing weather patterns that we may experience over a season. And not just in the United States, but right across the globe. So there is quite a bit of focus on this El Niño event. And one of the reasons for that is because the key monitoring region that forecasters watch is called the Niño 3.4 region, and I'm annotating it now. That area is over 1.7 degrees Celsius warmer than average. And once you get to about 1.5 degrees warmer than average, that's when you start to classify it as a strong El Niño event. So it's not just a run-of-the-mill El Niño event that we have. We actually have one that is strong. And the stronger the event, the more the patterns at the equator can matter to the prevailing weather patterns that occur in other parts of the world. So what happens is, over all of this warm waters, there's lots of rising air in the atmosphere over top. And what occurs is all of that warm water that's built up near the equator, it gets redistributed across the globe toward the poles, whether that's in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. And a lot of that warm air can also come with more moisture for parts of the globe, and we'll see that in the slides to come. So El Niño is really important in the grand scheme of things. It's a climate driver. It answers the question, who is at the steering wheel of Mother Nature's car? And that is why we focus on it a lot. It is the most predictable piece of the long-range forecasting puzzle. It may not mean the entire slice of the pie in terms of what drives our weather and climate, but it is the most predictable piece of that pie. And again, that's why it warrants quite a bit of attention for this winter season. that again. We have El Nino this year, but see all of the red that is across the planet, whether it's in the Atlantic Ocean or in the Pacific Ocean. Many areas are warmer than average, and these mean that the oceans, they have a role to play in the temperatures that we experience on land. So as the seas warm, the temperatures we experience on land also warm. So I think the cold air may be at a premium this winter. It's going to probably be fleeting when it occurs and not lasting terribly long. And that takes me to the next slide, which is showing the chance of above normal snowfall during all El Nino events in the past. And areas that are colored in blue on this map have a better than a 50% chance for having above normal snowfall during the winter season. That's December through February. And we can see that there's a good proportion of the Northeast and New England that is shaded in blue, including the Hudson Valley. About 50 to 60% of all El Nino episodes actually come with above normal snowfall in our region. But there's a caveat here, and that is that to make this map, we looked at all the El Nino events in the past. However, if you then say only look at the El Nino events that were strong, and again having that big temperature anomaly in the Central Pacific, you're going to have a bit of a different flavor. And I'll forward on to the next slide, which you'll see. This is looking at the percentage of strong El Nino events that had above normal snowfall. And the picture changes pretty dramatically. Suddenly, those blues that were showing on the previous slide turn to varying shades of red, which indicates lower than a 50% chance for having above normal snowfall in a strong El Nino winter. And in the Hudson Valley, looks like only maybe 30 or 40% of those strong El Nino episodes in the past ended up having above normal snowfall. So the odds are probably not in our favor based on this information for above normal snowfall. Now, as we have all of that warm water in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, what tends to happen as the atmosphere tries to redistribute all of that warmth in the ocean that builds up here near the equator. And one of the ways that it does that is through an enhancement in what we call the subtropical jet stream. And I'm circling that now. It is this elongated area from the Pacific Ocean that during El Nino events tends to blow stronger than normal. And that is shaded in red, winds that are stronger than normal at the jet stream level. So where the planes fly, much stronger than normal. So maybe if you were actually traveling from somewhere in the West Pacific, like Japan or the Philippines, and you were coming across back to the United States, maybe your travel would actually be a little bit quicker because of the strong jet stream in the winter season ahead. But in terms of our weather, what it will mean is that there's going to be lots of warm and moist air coming along, following along with this jet stream into the southern tier of the United States. So places like Florida and the southeast U.S. Could be in for quite a wet and stormy winter season because of this jet stream. But what can happen during these strong jet stream episodes is, on occasion, this southerly jet can become intertwined and merge with the northerly jet. And when that happens near the eastern seaboard, you can get really big coastal storms, those storms that we call nor'easters. We haven't had too many of those in winters past, recent winters. But with an El Nino event, it does increase the odds for those big coastal storms. But once again, it's going to be a fine line. Is it cold enough for snow, or do those storms form and then they move up the coast and just bring us a lot of rain? And that is the key question, I think, as we look ahead to this winter. We can see that the jet stream is going to be very active. It's going to be stormy near the eastern seaboard. But will those storms come with just a whole lot of rain like we've been seeing so far this year? Or on occasion, we'll just have just enough cold air? And you don't need that much. It just needs to be 32, 31 degrees. And if you have a lot of moisture, you could be looking at a lot of snow. So one of the factors this year, I think, is the boom potential. So if it's just cold enough and you have enough moisture, we could be talking about, the chance, elevated in chance for those big storms. But again, it needs to be cold enough. That is the key message. And we're going to look at those trends now. This is looking at different pressure patterns through the winter months. We'll start off in the month of December. Blue colors indicate low pressure and disturbed weather. Red colors indicate high pressure, which tends to bring more tranquil conditions. So again, we're starting off in December, and notice the sign for low pressure more over the west central United States. And when you get this type of pattern, this can bring more southerly winds into the eastern portion of the United States coming off the Gulf of Mexico. So it's not a very cold pattern. And if this were to eventuate, I wouldn't expect a really fast start to the winter season for the eastern United States. But watch as we go from December into January. See how that blue area shifts toward the east over the central states, which can bring some colder air into the middle part of the nation and sometimes into the east coast as well. But still, high pressure is hovering here near the East Coast, which may make it a little bit difficult to get enough cold air to bring, really snowy conditions. So maybe we do trend a little bit cooler as we go into the month of January, but maybe instead of it being snow, it's more ice and rain rather than all snow in our region. And finally, I'm going to go to February and notice how that blue signature covers the United States. Now it's sitting much closer to the eastern seaboard, and lots of red coloring here developing over Canada and Alaska. And that can be a sign of what we call high latitude blocking. So big high pressure systems that sit off to the north and cause stormy weather to kind of be anchored or stay in place further to the south over the mid-latitudes where a lot of people live. So the general patterns as we go through the winter season do suggest maybe a sluggish start and then maybe a flurry of storms toward the finish, and we could be seeing more snow events in the month of February. And on average, if we look back historically, February is our busiest month in terms of East Coast snowstorms. So if we use that climatological aspect with the prediction for this winter, those two things kind of stack on top of one another, and we could be looking at potentially quite an active end to the winter season, and maybe it lingers into the month of March too. We've certainly seen in some winters past starting slow, but persisting or lingering into the early portion of the spring season, and I wouldn't be shocked if that type of setup occurred this year. Now we're looking at precipitation, where it's forecast to be above normal in green or below normal in brown in the winter season to come. And focusing in here along the eastern side of the United States, part and parcel with that stronger than normal jet stream we were just looking at, all of those green colors, which indicates more precipitation than normal. And precipitation includes rain, it includes snow, sleet, freezing rain, the whole lot. So it doesn't distinguish which precipitation type we're looking at here, but it just tells us that there's going to be a lot of it near the eastern United States. And again, it matches very nicely with the slide we were just looking at with that stronger than normal jet stream. So all of that moisture, you can kind of follow that track here from the Pacific Ocean across Mexico into the Gulf of Mexico and then up the eastern seaboard. And of course, that is coming from a warm place. So if you're starting somewhere down here in the tropics and you're transporting warm air, moisture toward the north, well, as that moves north, it's going to retain some of those characteristics of being warmer and moister than normal. So again, the moisture is not going to be the issue, I don't think, this winter. It's going to be, are these air masses that we're getting cold enough for wintry precipitation? And El Niño, as I kind of look at other parts of the globe, has a really important role to play. Different areas of the globe can experience floods, such as parts of Eastern Africa, and droughts, such as Australia, during these El Niño episodes. So it does influence the weather and climate right across the planet, and that's why it warrants our attention and vigilance. And we'll take a closer look at this because it is pretty impressive. Again, December through February, those green colors really showing that enhanced precipitation. So no shortage of storms this winter. And that's, one key ingredient to, getting the snow. We have the moisture aspect, but will we have the cold air? And the next slide is going to show you the temperatures prediction for the winter season. So Lots of storms. Do plan, certainly have a good umbrella for this winter. Maybe it's December where you're, using the umbrella more than you typically expect. Maybe there's some humid days where we get these flows of air from the deep south, the Gulf of Mexico, and, you step outside and it's December and maybe it's 65 degrees. We saw in the winter of 2015-16. I remember that. I was still in New York at that time. I think it was around 70 degrees on Christmas Eve that year. Really impressive stuff. And this is what can happen during these El Nino winters. All right. I talked about temperatures. Now here is the forecast for the winter season. Blues indicating below average temperatures and reds indicating above average temperatures. So you can see there is quite a bit of red here across the northeastern corner of the United States. Here, the prediction across New York, about 1 to 2 degrees above average for the winter as a whole. That's not a huge anomaly predicted. Even if it's 1 or 2 degrees above average, you can certainly still get snow in that case. I mean, if it's instead of being 29, it's 30 or 31, well, that's still cold enough for snow or ice. But on the whole, it doesn't look like the coldest winter we've ever seen based on this prediction that we see here. It does look a little bit colder across the plain states and certainly into the southern plains around Texas and the Intermountain West as well. And we see a lot of warm air up toward Canada. I mentioned earlier those big high pressure systems that tend to sit over that region during winter, which can lead to warmer conditions for Canada during El Nino winters. Now, what we can do is take the climate model outputs, which they do rainfall, precipitation, the jet stream, ocean temperatures, air temperatures, as we've seen, but they actually also predict snowfall. Now, it's probably not a field or a variable that scientists often look at when we are looking at long-term forecasts, because there's not been a lot of validation or understanding quite how good the predictions of snowfall out several months are. And to be honest, they're probably not the best. However, I have been tracking these predictions over the last several years, and they've been pretty accurate for general themes. And when we talk about seasonal forecasting, that's what we're looking for. It's not like you're opening up your weather app and you can see on your phone for tomorrow, you're getting a detail for 3 p.m. Tomorrow, the prediction. When we're talking about things that are happening months in advance, it's not that specific. So we can't say exactly what's going to happen on Christmas Day or New Year's or President's Weekend. We're not that good. Certainly, if we were, we'd be, driving probably fancier cars, but we don't quite have that crystal ball. We're not soothsayers. So what we look for are signals. Will it be warmer? Will it be cooler? Will it be wetter? Or will it be drier? And that's kind of the art of seasonal forecasting, is understanding how the months ahead may differ from what is typical for the time of year. It's quite a bit different. You can think of it like, we have a party, it's a costume party, it's maybe a tropical theme, but you don't know the kind of attire, how everyone's going to come dressed to that party exactly. It's going to be in a tropical kind of vein, but you don't know, who is going to be wearing what at the party when you see them. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the snowfall prediction for those general themes in the winter season ahead. Now, if you like snowfall, this is probably not a nice map for you to see, because the red colors, that indicates predictions for below normal winter snowfall. And boy, does it cover quite a bit of the United States. And focusing in on the Northeast, there really isn't any area where the modeling is expecting above normal winter snowfall. Now, do we throw this prediction out the window, or do we take it maybe with a grain of salt? Now, what I would say is the last 4 winters, which I have been watching this prediction, it's been accurate in about 3 out of the last 4 winters. So it's got a decent little track record going here over the last couple of winters, and we haven't really had above normal snowfall for several winters. The last 5 to 10 years have been milder than average in general, with lower than normal snowfall. So this prediction kind of fits with that general trend, as well as the strong El Nino winter pattern that we saw. So This information and updates once a month. You can kind of find it on my social media channels. I sometimes share it in my weekly updates as well. But right now, the modeling is not particularly keen on a winter that has above normal snowfall along the eastern seaboard. So despite that storminess, it's the cold air factor that may be missing more times than not. I certainly do think there will be some snow days in the mix, but I think maybe when we close the books in the middle of March on the winter season, there's been more, weeks that had milder conditions than cooler conditions. And if it does snow, maybe it's of that wetter variety and you need to be up higher in elevation in the Catskills, for example, or the Hudson Highlands to get those higher accumulations. With climate change, what we saw last winter is the Hudson River almost playing an insulating effect, being warm and keeping those Hudson Valley kind of coastal communities right there near the river a little bit warmer. And you actually have to get farther away from the river to get some of those cooler temperatures, and I wouldn't be shocked to see a few of those themes kind of coming through again in the winter ahead. Now we'll go to key messages, and I do have one more kind of surprise for you before I let you go, but let's recap here. So you've just spent a good 20 minutes with me learning about the winter ahead. So let's kind of recap those key points. And the first one is that over the decades, Hudson Valley temperatures have been rising. The data certainly shows that. And there is a correlation between increasing temperatures and decreasing snowfall. As it gets warmer, it's harder to snow. And, when you're talking about, 1 to 3 degrees, it may not sound like a lot, but that could be the difference between, let's say, being 32 or 34 or 35 degrees. And, that's going to mean that, snow becomes rain for some areas, or snow is a mix of sleet and freezing rain instead of being all snow. So we're in an interesting area in the Hudson Valley where that rain snow line is, creeping northward with time, and it may become more and more difficult. Doesn't mean we can't get those big winters, big blizzards like we had in the past from time to time, but statistically they're just kind of less likely as things get warmer. And that kind of goes to the next point, which winter severity has been decreasing, and dramatically so in the last decade. So it doesn't mean that we can't have a blizzard of 1996 again in the future. There certainly will be one, but we need the stars to align really to get those big events here in the year 2023 with how warm the oceans are and how that's influencing our air temperatures as well. And this year, we've got the warm ocean temperatures in the Pacific Ocean, and that means El Niño is at play. And it's not just a weak one. It is a strong El Niño event. And strong El Niño events past come with a reduced chance for above normal snowfall during winter in the Hudson Valley. And we look back at some maps earlier to show that the odds for above normal snowfall are generally around 30% when we have strong El Niño events in the Hudson Valley. Now, what does it mean from month to month? So those month-to-month trends, well, we were looking at charts earlier that showed that it could be a slow start, but maybe a flurry of activity and a strong finish potentially in February and March. So El Niño events tend to be quite mild in the month of December, and then trend cooler with time as we go into the new year. So we may be waiting a little bit longer than we would typically expect to wait to potentially have our first snowfall event, and maybe a little bit longer to have our first big snowfall event this year because of this El Niño factor. Right, so before I let you go today, I did want to show you my new logo, my new theme for the 2023-24 winter, and that is on screen now. So really excited to share this. It's a colorful one this year. I'm ready for it's a little bit of a test, a multiple choice test. So as you're walking around the hallways of your school, you can have others maybe take this test, and there are no wrong answers. That's the great thing. So if you're ready for a snow day, a delay, an early dismissal, or all three, this is for you. And when I say that, I mean you can grab some pretty cool merch here. My sister helps out each and every year. She is a graphical designer, and she makes these pretty awesome custom logos, and I then put them on clothes, and really appreciate all of your support, not just this year, but over the years. So if you like what you see, feel free to head on over to bennollstore.com. That is where you can find t-shirts and sweatshirts and crew necks to keep you nice, cozy, and warm as we look ahead to the winter season. So we've got a couple weeks to go, make that a couple months before winter kicks off. But I hope that you are now a little bit more informed on what we may experience later this year. Trying something a little bit different this year. In the past, I have, written 10,000 word articles on the winter outlook, but I think this hopefully is a little bit more consumable. You're able to kind of rewind if you want to, review a concept or review a map. And of course, it's, in the comfort of your own couch or chair, you're just watching a video, which I think, can be maybe a little bit more personable, overall as a delivery of this information. So if you liked it, feel free to let me know. And if you have any questions, of course, drop that in the comment section. For the premium subscribers, really appreciate your continued support. And certainly as we look ahead, we're going to be, heading toward winter. Things are getting cooler out there. The leaves are changing and it's almost Halloween. So that means that winter is right around the corner. And with that, I say farewell. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the fall season. And certainly, I will be sending you messages each and every Sunday for the weekly outlook. But as we get closer to the winter season, if I do see something brewing, I will let you know as soon as I know. And if you do, appreciate those updates that come a little bit more routinely or a little bit earlier, you can subscribe. The premium subscription, just $5 a month or $50 a year. And once again, I really appreciate the support of everyone in the Hudson Valley. Doing this from New Zealand in the winter, there's about an 18-hour time difference, so it can be pretty dramatic. And often, I stay up late into the night to, do this work and keep everyone informed to the best of my abilities. And it's certainly, pretty busy for me these days with all the weather that's happening, whether it's here in the Southern Hemisphere or my home in the Hudson Valley, where I grew up, and I continue to really enjoy supplying everyone with these updates. So with that, take care and have a fantastic rest of the fall season. Really appreciate everyone tuning in today. See you next time. Bye-bye.